So you're listening to Radio Shields Northeast, and I'm Amanda Joy. And today I am delighted to have Jonny Thompson on the show. Jonny, well, as you know, the theme of this month has been about pregnancy. We've been talking about pregnancy. We've been talking about birth. We've talked about hypnobirthing. We've talked about postnatal care. And we've been talking all about the transition that parents go through as well. And Jonny is an amazing speaker. He's been guiding parents through difficult times, difficult life challenges, and he really his kind of mission really is to break the mold on how things are currently being done. He's looking at alternative and more effective ways to support mums and dads who are going through perhaps breakups or difficult times. To kind of shift away, to move away from that really painful hurt, those feelings of revenge and all those kind of nasty things that get said, and move into a place that's more filled with compassion, with better communication and understanding. And Jonny himself had a breakdown in his relationship about just over 3 years ago, and he had to leave his daughter behind, and then went through the whole process of going through family court, where he did eventually get supervision, gain supervised visits of his daughter, and it's taken him a lot, but he really has worked really hard with his partner, his now ex-partner, but from what he was talking to me about, they do still sound that they have an amazing partnership. And he now has a great relationship where he speaks to her about everything that needs to be spoken about, even those things that can often feel very, very comfortable. And, you know, recently there's been lots of stuff in the press about Fathers for Justice, and a lot of people are now speaking about how things do really need to change. So welcome to the show, Jonny. Thank you so much for coming on. Dads don't get spoken about very much when it comes to these sorts of things. So I am so delighted that you're here to represent the men who are in this situation. Tell me a bit more about what happened to you.
Well, so just over 3 years ago that I was really struggling in a relationship, and we had a 5-month-old daughter, and I was doing everything I could to take care of her and do my best there, and also do my best for my partner at the time. And she had a child from my previous relationship, you know, in that time that we'd been together, it had been quite stressful and painful, and a lot of stuff going on that was impacting both of our lives and also our relationship. And I felt that I'd got to a point where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to approach the problems that we were having, the stuff that was going on between us. You know, as I said, I'd come into the relationship with some programs running around not being good enough, around not being in my masculine, around that well, no matter what I did, it would never be good enough, and I could never make a woman happy. And at the same time, my ex had programs around men not showing up in their masculine and never being good enough, and so we created this perfect storm. We met each other perfectly, and we're fulfilling our needs in you know, making sure that we were running those programs to our best ability. And it just created a lot of conflict and pain, and just one morning I just couldn't take anymore, because I didn't know what I could do. And I knew that for my own sake, and for my own health and sanity, and also for the health of my daughter, our daughter, I needed to leave. So I left that relationship.
Very difficult time and very difficult decision, but I know a lot of people, a lot of dads are in that same sort of place. They just feel like there's nothing more that can be done. They've done everything that they can, and for their own sanity, for their own mental and possibly sometimes even physical well-being, they need to remove themselves. from that relationship, which may have become very negative.
Yeah, and I didn't know where to go as well. Um, I just didn't know who to turn to, who to go and ask, and
Mm.
I had a couple of friends that have been through similar situations, and their suggestion was mainly what the first one was to get into court as soon as possible, to make sure that I got access, agreed access, documented legal access as soon as possible. So I started down that route, and just felt that was biased as well. I just felt that going through CAFCAS and into family court, there was just a bias against myself, um, and that just made it even more difficult because I would talk about what had happened, and almost felt like I wasn't being believed and wasn't being understood,
There still seems to be a lot of bias in that like the mums are being favoured in
mm,
terms of what the process is. Would you say that was your experience?
I would say that that's my experience, and I would say that in the majority of cases that's what's happened. But I do know that there are women that would feel the same from their side. So
Yeah, sure.
it's not the same for everybody. But I would say that I think part of the difficulty is that generally the mum is the resident parent, so the dad has to move out of the family home,
Okay.
and so the primary carer is generally the mum. And so I don't know whether there is just like some sort of natural bias that happens in that way. Um, but yeah, I think it was very difficult to be heard and understood. I felt as I went through it.
And you're in this place of massive change, life change.
Mm,
It's a lot of turmoil, it's a lot of
mm,
emotional pain, and to have to deal with that kind of court system. What was
mm.
that like, going through that court system?
Well, I don't know how they view it, but I felt a lot of guilt, in leaving our daughter there. I just
Yeah.
felt absolute guilt and shame, and the thought of everybody pointing the finger at me, saying bad man, bad dad. He walked out on his child, and I felt that just carried into the whole thing. Like and the only reason I wanted to get into court was because I wanted to see my daughter. I wanted to be an
Oh,
active dad. There are enough dads that don't want to know,
yeah.
and so for the authorities and family court to not support a dad that does want to be active, does want to play as much of a role as possible, it kind of conflicts me. It doesn't make sense. Like I said, there's enough dads that don't want to be around. So the ones that do want to be around, I feel that we should give them as much support and help and guidance and um, the ability to be the dad when they want to be present, they want to be active.
So you felt that support really wasn't there for you, and
No.
possibly just isn't there at all as a
Mm.
part of the system that we've got in place currently. Is that right?
Yeah. I feel it's by design. My solicitor took a guess quotes at how long it might take and how much it might cost, and she was pretty much bang on. And so I feel it's almost by design that the disruption and the hoops you have to jump through, because I did have to jump through a lot, um, is by design to just keep that separated mums and dads in conflict, and almost part of a grand money making scheme.
God, it's just terrible, isn't it?
Mm,
You're vulnerable. There's a lot of financial pressures. There's a
mm,
lot of dramatic changes going on in your life, and you're there saying, "Hey, I want to be a dad.
mm,
I want to be an active father."
mm.
And it's quite difficult. But you went through that process. You
Yeah,
survived it, and you
yeah,
came out of the other end. And you'd got supervised
yeah.
visits with your daughter. What are supervised visits? What does that
So,
entail?
so because of some of the allegations that were made, I had to do certain things. Like, I mean, as you can see, I don't have much hair. I had to grow my hair for 3 months, to have a drug and alcohol test. I had to do 13 weeks of a course called Strengthening Families, Strengthening Communities. I had to obviously prove that I was capable, and part of that, and because of the allegations, I was only allowed to have 2 hours every 2 weeks supervised. So basically, I would go to my ex's house, and one of her friends would sort of babysit me while I sat with our daughter for a couple of hours, and had to build up from that amount of time.
So I'm quite tempted to ask you if you felt like that was a fair decision that had been made, but I don't know how relevant that fairness is in this situation. Did you feel like that was the right decision that was made for you at the time?
For me personally, no. I understand that in some relationships, in some situations, there are going to be safeguarding issues, okay? But there'd never been, I'd never had any issues. I've done everything from changing her very first nappy in hospital, to doing feeding and everything while I was in the house. And so from there never being an issue to suddenly I'm now a potential threat to our daughter. It just felt like, again, I was being almost pushed away, and just to make it as hard and as difficult and as possible for me. But but no matter what they have asked me to do, I'll have done it because I wanted to, you know, think about the long term, but be with my daughter, and be as much the best dad I can be. And so whatever they said I had to do, I did. And it just felt like all of a sudden I'd become incapable of being with our daughter even for a couple of hours at a time.
Must have been so difficult.
Mm,
But we chat a little earlier, and that has dramatically changed for you now.
mm.
Tell me about where are you now? What's the relationship like with your partner now?
Yeah. So now, I mean, we are a little bit down the line, but I have since the last year, maybe 18 months, just been continually working on myself, and working on how I show up, and what my energy is, and what my focus is. And so now we've got to the point where I have her for every other weekend, and then every Tuesday. The Tuesdays have just started, and from being scared to pick up my phone to look at the messages, I now happily call my ex and talk to my ex, and discuss what's going on and what needs to happen, and even went to the nativity that's just gone at her nursery, which was amazing. And because she was there waving and hello mummy, hello daddy, and she hasn't really seen us in that space. So that was amazing.
Together,
Sorry.
together in that
Yeah,
space.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Oh,
it was just so
lovely.
nice to be able to do that, and because I absolutely want our daughter to have the best of both of us, because it makes everybody's lives better and easier. I want her mum to be super healthy, super happy, because it's best for everyone, and especially our daughter. And so I've gone from that place of being fearful and worried and scared, to now being happy that we've moved in the right direction. And it was all through work that I've done on myself.
Amazing. So you spoke about having those important conversations with your ex-partner. You
Mm,
spoke about those things that, quite often dads don't get to speak about these things.
mm.
What sort of things do you think really need to be spoken about?
Well, I think it's important to know what your boundaries are, because the parents are going to probably have different ideas and ways they may want to bring up a child. Even couples that are together, there's possibly conflict at times, and so I have to be really mindful of um, following what her mum wants to do as much as possible up to a point. And then when there are occasions when I'm not happy about something, or I disagree with something, to vocalize that in the right way, and to have a discussion about it, and not just go on the attack and say, why is this happening? Why is that happening? This is ridiculous. I have to take a pause, take a moment, and make sure that I do communicate in the right way to her. you know, about food, about, I don't know, what she might be doing, or you know, around Christmas and stuff like that. You know, I have to make sure that um, I'm taking her mum's uh, decisions and beliefs into consideration as well, and not just saying this is wrong.
So it's about having really good, clear communication
Yeah,
with your ex partner, and making sure that you're both working towards common objectives,
mm.
common goals, common ideas, and that you're both kind of on the same page, if you like, with regards to activities and food and general
Yeah,
care as well.
yeah. And not compromising what either of us may want. You know, it's we are probably going to disagree on certain things, but it's not
Oh,
about just um, because I'll have resentment if I'm constantly just um, doing and saying whatever you know, whatever she says goes. But it's doing it without coming at it at a place of fear. It's about coming from a good place of love, and you know, being true, and not wanting to just cause conflict.
so you're in that situation where something is, you're maybe having a disagreement about something. You're not in agreement with each other. You kind of you have opposing ideas about how things should be done. How do you manage that
Well,
situation?
it's similar to how I've managed this whole situation. You know, I'll generally journal about it and write down, you know, how do I want things to be, um, and 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 then when I'm writing that out, what feelings come up for me in that moment, which is how I've now dealt with this whole situation, and then I, if necessary, I release any kind of negativity around it, and then communicate,
All
and
right,
it just with
so
different.
journaling is usually what you know, people write down what their thoughts are, what their feelings are, what you know, kind of they're going through. It's more like a diary. How do you do your journaling?
So this started a little while ago when I was in a place of and as you know, we chatted a little bit about earlier. I was in a place of my ex is this, my ex behaves like this. You know, I was constantly
Like
blaming.
negative stuff.
Yeah, and expecting her to show up in a certain way. And so, of course, she was showing up in that way. So I was getting exactly what I was, you know, expecting. And so I stopped doing that and started to journal about how I wanted things to be, and how I wanted her to show up, and how I wanted things to be between us. And so I'd write out basically, you know, at handover, it's nice and polite, and we'll communicate clearly, and our daughter's really happy. And just every day for a few minutes, just writing down how I wanted things to be and how I wanted to feel. You know, I feel happy that we can talk freely about what we need and what we want. You know, that our communication is polite and clear, and is supportive. And I would just write out about that. But then the next part of what I would do is then, as I was writing it, I'd be saying in my head, "This isn't going to work. This is a lot of old rubbish. This will never make any difference." And so I would journal about how I think, how I wanted things to be, and how I felt. And then afterwards, I would write all the stuff that came up as I was doing it. Like I said, this is rubbish. This will never work. And then I would work on those beliefs and those feelings to release those.
So we
And
call those limiting beliefs,
yeah,
when you kind of put yourself in your own jail, don't you? That's never going to work. Well, that's the
mm,
decision that you've made. You've chosen that.
mm,
So you started looking at how you could make these things work. You looked at how you could start to make these more positive situations and circumstances come into fruition.
mm.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it's you know, well, it was thinking about the long term and what did I ultimately want, and
Yeah.
how was I going to get there? And you know, my expectation at the time was she'll never change.
Mm,
She'll never do what I want. She'll never, you know, all of this stuff. And I thought, well, okay, so what can I do? What am I in control of? What are the things that I can do to make changes? And so once I
mm,
started doing this journaling, and I started releasing my beliefs around what I felt could and couldn't happen,
mm.
that things started to change, and I started getting more time. The conversation was politer, and the time has just gone up and up and up. like I say, in the last 18 months, well, mainly in the last year, really more than ever, to getting overnights, to getting weekends, to getting a
Yeah.
Tuesday. And this is all around the work I've done on myself. I'm releasing these, old patterns and beliefs.
So the journaling really helped you to 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 show up in the best way that you could as a dad.
Mm.
But I guess the journaling for you also made perhaps some of your unconscious behavior more conscious. It kind of brought some of those areas of that you need to work on, those insecurities. You spoke about quite a bit about how you had fear, um, they brought up to the conscious mind, really, to the conscious part of your awareness, and then you did work on those things.
Mm.
I would have imagined that you would have needed to have gone through, because it's a big process of self-reflection, and a lot of work. I would imagine that you would have had to have gone through quite a process of forgiveness as well. Is that true?
All part of it, yeah, yeah. Because the journaling about how we want things to be is the first step. Because once you're doing that and you are writing down, look, this is what I really want to have happen. If you don't take that next step, and recognize, okay, well, then what do I believe about what I want to have
Mm,
happen? Like as in you said, limiting beliefs and stuff. You then need to release all of that, and part of that is forgiveness. It's forgiveness of yourself, maybe, for getting into a situation. Like I forgave myself for being in that place and being in that relationship.
mm,
Um, I've also forgiven my ex for how she's shown up. Forgiven my parents for the upbringing that I had. Forgiven my foster mum for how that was. There's as we're doing this journaling and then working on our beliefs, we can walk through a process of forgiveness as well, for anybody that comes up in that moment. Because each day it could be somebody different that pops into your mind. Could be an old boss, could be a
mm,
friend. Doesn't always have to be family members. There could be
mm.
different people that come up, and as a result of continually going deeper and releasing, um, these old programs and beliefs, different people may pop up as you go to a deeper and deeper level. Um, and there's different ways for doing that.
I find your whole approach completely refreshing, and it just feels very loving and self loving and self nurturing as well, which is completely the opposite to what I've sort of seen and only briefly seen on the television when it comes to dads who are fighting to have access to their kids. There seems to be a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration.
Yeah,
There's a lot of shouting. I mean, I totally understand the situation must be so painful
yeah,
soul destroying for
mm,
dads.
yeah.
But all that shouting and aggression, how productive is that? Really?
Well, I was there. I was an angry man because I just was yeah, so angry and so scared and so terrified of what might be happening and what would happen to me. And so I get where that anger comes from, but I just find that for years now, if the approach of being angry at your ex um, is not working, why keep doing that? And for me as well, I've also recognised, like I said, where my ex was and what she might be going through and what she might be experiencing. Because as a mum, if that's your main role in life, and I'm not being derogatory or negative about that, because
Not at all.
if a woman wants to be
Being a
a
mother
amazing
is
mum,
possibly the most important job in the world.
exactly. And if
Yeah.
somebody wants to be fully,
Mm.
committed into that and doing that, and that's their main role, then absolutely, I love that. But it's just about that when that role is threatened, quite rightly so, a mum is gonna do everything to defend that and do whatever she needs to do. So I totally get that, and
Absolutely.
and to have an appreciation of that doesn't make things that go on okay, but it just allows me a better understanding of an appreciation of why she might have been acting like that. But you see, in the press, the main group that people probably know of as Fathers for Justice, but they constantly
Mhm.
go on the attack for any incident involving a woman where they feel, oh, well, a man will be treated differently, and why is she getting away with this? Even recently, in the last few weeks, there's been quite a few attacks on different women, and I just don't get the purpose of that is now.
Doesn't seem to have a lot of function. It's not. It's just noise and sound, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
not really
yeah,
making any changes. I think
yeah,
as well, women's groups are probably equally, in a similar place,
mm,
and that they're not always about supporting that
mm,
nurturing relationship between the mum and the dad.
mm,
It's quite a lot of mudslinging and negativity about
mm.
men as well. There definitely does need to be some changes. What positive changes have been put in place already?
From my point of view, or from wider um, groups.
From yours and from wider.
Well, I think that um, I think people are tired of the rhetoric that men are bad, women are bad, and attacking each side. I think people are tired of that,
Mm.
and know that it doesn't work because
Mhm.
it's draining. It is draining to be
Yeah.
constantly attacking other people.
Mm.
I don't know how people do it, and I just feel that we need to just stop and take this other approach of seeing things from the other side's perspective, and having an awareness and appreciation of what they need, as well as your own. The primary focus is yourself and working on yourself and what can you do and what can you change. But it's while having an awareness of where they're at and what they might be going through as well. And I think that men are more encouraged now to talk about stuff. There's been a great the football at the weekend. There was the games all started a minute late for mental health awareness, which was
Saw
great.
that. That was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah.
brilliant.
So there is more stuff coming in to help, because there are a lot of hurt little boys out there, that don't know where to turn, don't know what to say, and don't know how to behave,
Mm.
um, and just um, need a little bit of support so that we can then get back into our masculine and get into our purpose and support women in the right way that we need to be doing.
I love that. And so what you're doing now is you've now taken this a step further, and you're now supporting dads. You're helping dads to recognize how they can be the best dad that they can be, and
Yeah,
you're helping dads also to see things from different perspectives, perhaps even to see things from their ex-partner's point of view. You're helping them to understand that motherhood in itself is a part of a woman's identity. Particularly when they're a full-time mum, that's who they are. It's what they are. And when attacking them is just taking away. It's attacking their identity. It's attacking their
mm,
personality, which you're only going to get a defensive response to that, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
You're supporting people and showing them how journaling and writing where you'd like to be, how you'd like things to be, how you dream things would be, that happy, healthy relationship that you kind of really want, and how you can use that to bring what is unconscious into a conscious reality so that you can work on it.
yeah.
That self-reflective process of growth and change. And then I think what I heard you say, which was just most powerful, was self-forgiveness, forgiving yourself. That's
Mm.
the hardest. That must be the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that there was that when I walked out, I was like, shit, what have I done?
Yeah.
What have I just done? Oh my god! And it just was the most overwhelming, awful feeling.
Mm.
And that was probably the toughest part was forgiving myself for that, and did
Yeah.
take a few goes. But ultimately now I know that it was the right thing to do and the best thing to do, for all of us involved in this. And then that was very close. A close second would be forgiving my ex for stuff as well. So they were pretty close to each other. But and like I said to you, it doesn't mean that any kind of negative behaviour is okay. It's not saying that behaviour is
No,
okay, but
definitely not.
it's just making peace with that aspect of it, and saying, well, what do I want? Do I want to focus on that for the rest of my life, or do I want things to be great with my daughter, really?
Just wonderful. A wonderful, wonderful program that you have, that self-reflective process that you support men through as well, so that they can really be the best dads they could be. How do people get in touch with you? How do people find out more about the work that you do?
Well, I've got on my Facebook, my personal profile. I put some stuff up on that, and I'll be putting more on that as well. I'm going to be running a few events around specifically what I do, but also incorporating other aspects of parenting as well. So we'll be launching those fairly soon. I've got a Twitter account as well, which I kind of put some stuff on. So I'm just building that up now in terms of how to contact me on social media. I mean, I've got my email address can be made public for people to get in touch if they want to get in touch. People just message me now and just say, "Hi, I'm going for some stuff. What do you advise?" And so I'm
Yeah.
going to be also bringing out like a guide, if you like, really, just a guide to navigating this stuff with the steps that I've kind of talked about, and a few extra things in there, because it's the journaling is the first part. Then you need to look at what comes up, and then we need to work on releasing those old programs and beliefs that don't serve, and peel back the layers and get back to being who you really are. So that guide will be coming out soon as well.
Such a challenging time for dads and mums, parents, families. I'm absolutely delighted that you've just poured your heart and your passion into producing a guide, because we do need a bit of a roadmap, don't we,
Yeah.
sometimes, to see us through these really challenging times. And there's not enough, really. There's nothing out there really for dads. There's so little there for dads. So this guide is going to be like gold for dads who are going through a similar situation, and it's great that you've just offered up your Facebook page as a
Yeah, people
so
want to contact
people
me on
can
that.
get in touch with you. That's just
Yeah.
wonderful. And I'll share all those links on our Radio Shields Facebook page, and if people want to get in touch, they can get in touch with us here, as well as reaching out to you directly. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Um,
And if anybody is holding any events anywhere around the country, I'm happy to come along and talk if it would, help and support in some way as well.
Yeah, please, if you're hosting if you're hosting any sort of events where you feel Johnny's input would be beneficial, I'm sure there's loads. Please do get in touch with him. He's a great guide for dads in this this sort of difficult thing. Men do need that parental support. They need that. They do need that guidance, and it really isn't there for a lot of guys. So if you're a guy and you're listening to this, or if you're a woman and you're listening to this, and you know a guy who's in this kind of situation, do share this information. Do share Johnny's details with them as well. And if you are having an event, get Johnny along to it to talk about this amazing program that he's putting together. This absolutely fantastic guide, this breaking the mold guide on how to move forward and support mums, support dads, and keep families together with love and compassion, and not in this sort of warlike state, which is so commonly happening nowadays. So, Jonny, thank you for coming on today and
Thank
talking with
you.
us about this. It's so important that men are represented in these discussions, and so thank you for bringing this really wonderful, inspirational view and guide that you're producing as well. It's been great to chat to you.
No, thanks so much for asking me on. You know, that we've got it's a lot of work to do, but I just feel that we can do this. There's good things that are going to come and change, and ultimately we want to work with the legal system and make some changes there too. That's the ultimate aim.
Absolutely. But there is light at the end of the tunnel for dads that are going through this. You just need to reach out and ask for that all important help. Thanks, Jonny. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thanks.